Okay, here we go. Alright, so the purpose of this stream... hold on. I'm hearing myself because of the stream chat, or the stream having audio. Okay, also if you hear an echo, too bad. That's just the way things are with things right now. But yeah, the purpose of this stream is just to go through Halo 5 and criticize basically everything about it. I'm not going to do campaign critiques or anything, because yeah, no, just the gameplay is not that different from normal like multiplayer and stuff, so, and I'm not doing a story critique, nor am I going to be criticizing the art style. Art style will kind of just be, you know, you think what you think about it. But yeah, let's get started. So right off the bat, we've got a menu that at first, you know, doesn't seem too bad. Not the greatest for Halo in my opinion, but you know, it works okay. But then if you go into these things, oftentimes it takes time, which for some reason it's not doing it right now. But usually there's some sort of loading screen blocking or like in the way. So you want to go into social and then it loads in order to get to social, but I don't know why it's not happening right now. It must be specifically when you have just played a mission. But okay, so let's see. Let's start with the customization area then. So first thing that's pretty messed up to me, the helmet is under the armor. The helmet should be the top. That's your face. The helmet is what represents your face. It's the top of the Spartan. Whenever Halo games have had customization, before this, the helmet was at the top, but now you start with the body armor if you go in here, which also, it always, when you go back out, it goes to the top. It should always go back to the helmet because that's your identifying feature. People aren't going to identify you by what chest plate you're wearing. Oh, whoops. By what chest plate you're wearing. They're going to identify you by your helmet. It's only when two people have the same helmet and visor that they will identify you by your body armor. So there's no good reason for the body armor to be at the top, because generally it's just always ideal for you to be looking at the top, or at your head first. Also, the jumping back to the first thing there on the list is generally pretty terrible, because that adds extra steps if you want to, say, change your armor, then change your helmet, then change your visor. Now I had to go twice down. Now I have to go down a third time. Now, yeah, they did add the bumper thing, but we'll get into why this is especially a problem in this game a little bit later. So I'm going to change my colors here to this pretty abstract combination. I'm going to go with this because I know no piece of armor will actually have that color. And this. I know, hideous color combination, but the purpose... Okay, yeah. I'll get to the visors later too. But let's start by looking through all of these body armor pieces now. Well, right off the bat, customizing your entire set of armor other than your helmet, really bad choice, mostly because, for one, people got used to having more customization. So when you're making a game that's supposed to be a successor to a popular series of games, you don't want to take features out that are popular, because that's going to make people mad, which is what happened. Also, there's no real merit in having done this with their business plan, because with the requisitions, like, you'd think, oh, maybe they made that decision for the Rex, but why would they do full sets if they're wanting to oversaturate or to give you lots of things to unlock? In reality, they could have taken out a lot of these extra things and not bothered to make all these extra pieces of armor, while still having just as much, if not more, armor to get out of rec packs if they just would have set it up with individual parts. Right here, what we've got right here is a helmet, a chest plate, right and left shoulder, wrists, and legs, according to Halo 5's, or Halo 4's customization they had before. They would have had, oh, I didn't even include the visor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 things you could change on your Spartan, originally. That's what Halo 4 had. And of course, if you made it so that you unlocked the shoulders simultaneously, that would mean with air assault by itself, just this air assault set, you would have 6 things you could unlock. Well, maybe 5. I was counting the visor there, wasn't I? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah. 5 unlockables. All air assault. Technically. I mean, the legs and wrists are a little bit different. You see those reoccurring throughout multiple sets. But, yeah, the armor here, if they did the individual customization like they had before, it really would have helped them give people more things to earn out of rec packs, and people would look a lot cooler. Because they could actually, like, say they really like this chest plate, but these shoulder pads, they could choose those things. Instead, they went and made it so that you have to stick with a preset limitation that is completely unnecessary. Now, before I get into individually critiquing these different pieces, I do want to point out 2, make that 3 or 4 fatal flaws with this UI. First off, your Spartan, I'm zoomed out as far as I possibly can. I can't see my feet. I have no idea what my Spartan's feet look like, what color they are, anything. And guess what? I can see the shins now, but watch what happens when I go into the color area. Now I can't see my lower legs either. In here, I can. There's no nameplate, nothing like that. No fog either. I still can't see my feet, but I can see my shins and stuff. I go out to here, there's fog blocking off the lower parts of my shins, and my nameplate is blocking my knees. That just doesn't make any sense. You really should be able to see your entire Spartan, not just the upper part. And we'll see later how problematic this can be when you're trying to pick your colors and whatnot with certain sets, because some sets do different things with the colors, which is one rather inconsistent thing about this game in general. One more thing I want to point out about colors. I'm kind of jumping all over the place here, but colors are kind of a big deal. So they've got all these colors, right? But something that they don't really make good use of is the secondary color. And that'll be something I'll be pointing out as I go through the other gear. Also, of course, I am sure many have noticed or heard this mentioned, but the color on the underlay there, just really, that's a bad design choice because of the fact that it makes everything blend together so much. They would have actually been better off if they absolutely needed to have that color there. Would have been better off if they chose the secondary color for that, especially with how lightly they influence the secondary color on the armor. It just doesn't do a whole lot. So then, if you wanted to, you could have changed it to pepper here, this black color, and that would change the underlay to be black. And that, as you might have noticed, has like no change basically to what my Spartan looks like. And we'll get into that more now. So right off the bat, I've got this air assault gear here. One thing I'd like to point out is they, for some reason, if you look at the center of the chest plate between the two pink stripes, the green there is darker. That's not another color. That's the color that I have chosen being darkened. Why is it darker? That's the simple question I have to ask. What reason do they have for changing the color that I already picked? If I want part of my Spartan to be darker, I will make it darker. Now with this, that isn't that big of a deal. That's just like the center of the chest, a little bit of detailing around the legs and on the knees, and around the shoulder pads and the top of the helmet, which is actually quite a few places, but you know, it's forgivable how it's used here. But later, it won't be quite so forgivable. Again, secondary color is kind of not being used very well. I think it's fine how it's used on the chest plate, because generally the chest plate is supposed to be the primary color. That's the way that is usually done in Halo. So that wouldn't be too big of a deal that it's not very prominent on the chest plate. Usually it's not there at all. But the shoulder pads, there's this unnecessary gray on the shoulder pads that could totally be replaced with the secondary color. Or they could have done the surrounding area, the insides and edges of the shoulders with pink, or with the secondary color, but they didn't. Just overall, the secondary colors don't have much prominence. And this is actually one of the better cases in this game, which is kind of terrible, but yeah. And we'll be focusing on the helmets a little bit more specifically later. For now, I'm just going to focus on body armor. Also, this layout here for selecting your piece of gear, I want to point out a couple serious flaws with it. First off, when you go in, you're hovering over the first piece of gear. Even though I'm wearing this, or wearing air assault, what happens is if I pick, oh my goodness, if I, wow, just picked the worst piece of gear. If I select it now, I'm still hovering over air assault. No matter what armor I'm wearing, it'll always hover me over the first thing on the list. Same problem as up here. I pick the visor, I back out of it, it's hovered over armor. This shouldn't be a thing. It's not too hard to take something like this, UI, and just tell it whatever you were just in is what you're hovering over, or whatever you have equipped is what you're hovering over. A lot of games do it. There's no reason to ignore that, because the fact of the matter is now, if I want to go to the next thing after Seeker, I have to go all the way over there, which is pretty fast thanks to the triggers, but not very easy to look at. But if they had it so that you initially hover over whatever you have equipped, I could just go through and like pick whatever and just move on to the next piece of gear like that, even while going in and out and changing the helmet and all of that. But instead, every time I'm always hovered over this air assault. Also, because the body armor is just everything except for the helmet, the picture has to be zoomed out a lot more than it should be, which means the portrait for the gear is very hard to discern, especially because they show everything in full color rather than just, oh, it's the chest plate. See, that's one thing that Reach did really well, which I'll critique that one in another stream. But what Reach did really well was they'd have the armor piece, let's say the chest plate is the armor piece in question here. They'd have that in the color that they're showing it in, which would usually be a pretty simple color, not like too flashy or anything like that, but a color where you can see detail without any issues, but at the same time it's not burning your eyes out to look at it. This deep blue that they have for a lot of these is really hard to look at. I'm not sure why, and it might just be me, but I think it's the fact that it's kind of dark and very deeply saturated. Makes it very hard to see what you're looking at in the icons. It's a really good thing that it does change the armor on your Spartan just by hovering over it. If I had to select it in order to look at it, that would be really frustrating. But thankfully they didn't do that. They just made it so that it hovers over. So that's one good thing. But yeah, also things with Athlon here. They've got Athlon, and then they've got Athlon, whatever that's called, and they've got all these different variants, but they left them in the same category. It's just all in the same thing, which makes it extremely hard to look through this entire list when it doesn't need to be. Most of this stuff is duplicate pieces of gear. All they'd have to do to make it so much better to look through, even if they stuck with the way they have it where all of the gear is all controlled by this one category, if they just would have made it so that selecting this would take you to another section where you could pick the variant that you want, that would clean up this entire area so much, make it so much easier to navigate through this. But of course, it would be even easier if they were all individually selectable. So if it were zoomed in on the chest plate is the only thing with any saturation in the icon. So you don't see the bright blue of the bodysuit there, or the shoulder pads or arms mixing in with the colors. You just see a close-up shot of the chest plate, and everything else is desaturated. If they did that, that would make it really easy. But then also if they made all of these variants a separate category that would open when you select the gear, that would just be really helpful. On top of being able to hover over whatever you have equipped upon entry. That would just make all of this so much easier. So, yeah. Like I said, with Air Assault, it's pretty good coloring for the body, though I feel like they should have used more secondary color with the shoulders. Arms and legs, they can do what they want. We've never really had a consistent thing in Halo about whether or not there should be secondary color on the arms, the lower parts of the arms, or the boots, legs. So, because Halo 3, basically your secondary color was just your shoulder pads and a little detail on the helmet. And then in Halo Reach, all of a sudden, your entire boots are the secondary color. Oftentimes knee pads also being the secondary color, as well as a lot of detailing all over the place. But yeah, so they can really do what they want with the arms and legs, but it would make most sense if they stuck to the normal plan of having the shoulder pads be colored with the secondary color, because otherwise the secondary color is very poorly and inconsistently used. And so yeah, Reach kind of had a problem with that too, where a lot of the shoulder attachments didn't use the secondary color, and so they just didn't stand out as much. You couldn't tell what someone was wearing shoulder pad wise, unless they were wearing one of the big ones. It's part of the reason why the big shoulders were so popular. Alright, now we're looking at Anubis. A little change of pace. Again, not going to be critiquing the art style, though I would say this does look pretty cool. But yeah, interesting choice of how the secondary color is used on this, and I personally can't see any problem with it other than lack of consistency. I know it would just definitely be a lot more clear what to expect out of these things if the colors were actually properly or consistently shown. But again, don't really see a whole lot of issues with this design-wise. Colors are pretty well used. Don't see anything changing the colors that I have chosen. Let's go on to this one. And now this one is going to be the first one that I really, I guess, roast. And that's because of the white. Now, I don't know what they were thinking with this, but white doesn't go with everything. If I want a stealth guy, what am I supposed to do about this white? Now, if they added a detail color, like what Halo 3 had, they could have made that the detail color, if they really wanted those lines to be like that. But instead, they opted to choosing to make it white. As if white goes with everything. I don't know what they were thinking when they chose that. But it just, I don't get it. It just doesn't make sense. There. It's not the same color I had before, but it'll do. The secondary color is actually pretty well used in this set, but the white, why is there white? That makes no sense whatsoever. It barely adds anything to it anyway. It just detracts from it. It just makes it so that you are permanently, if you wear this gear, you are forced to have white, which doesn't work with everything. Sometimes you don't want white, so there's no reason to force players to have a color that they don't want when you are letting them color just about everything else. Even if it were black, that would work a lot better, because black actually does go with everything. That's why the black underlay is so effective. But if you want to go with something like a black color scheme or other things, white just doesn't work with everything. So then with this one, we've got something that I've already mentioned, but I really hate how they do this. Why is there dark green? My green is that middle green, the green on the middle and on the top of the chest plate. There's absolutely no reason to change what my color that I've chosen is. Again, if I want to choose a particular color, let me choose it. With this dark green, it might look good, but look at what's happening here. The secondary color, nowhere to be seen. Well, not nowhere. It's a bunch of thin lines though. You're never gonna see this in gameplay. You're never gonna notice, oh look at that, he's got pink lines all over him. No. And then the knuckles, which is a weird place to put the secondary color in the first place, but that's partially because it's just the bodysuit shouldn't be the colors of your armor. But all they'd have to do is take all of those parts that they colored dark green and make them the secondary color and take out all those lines. Look at what I can do. If I want that green, look what I can do. Now the main color that I have is that green. Look at that. They gave you access to that green, or a close green. So there's no reason to force the player to have a darker color by default unless they choose it. Or you could make a special piece of gear. That's another thing. They could make use of, or go ahead and make another version of this piece of gear that is entirely dark, and that could actually be cool. Imagine if you have a certain piece of gear that you can choose, like if this has a secondary color instead of that dark green, or that dark area is the same as my primary. They could have given me a variant that I could get that would be all dark, which would mean I'd have darker options, which would be really cool. But instead, they control the look unnecessarily. They take control from me, the player, when there's absolutely no reason to. It's strange. With this one, I don't know what's going on here. I really don't know what to say about it. I don't know. Aviator. Here, see, this is the same issue. My secondary color, everywhere that it occurs, is dark. And this is where it becomes especially obvious where the issues with the darkening occur, because see, my helmet has the bright color and my body armor has the dark color, which means that they don't match. They don't look right. It's like I've got pink on the top of my helmet and dark red for the body armor as a secondary. It's also quite inconsistent. I think it was supposed to look like camouflage, but yet they didn't commit to that look. So it's kind of weird, especially because the only part that's not symmetrical is the chest. It's just weird. Doesn't make sense. Okay, so the back plate there is also the same. But yeah, no, it just doesn't make any sense why they would force you to have that color. If I wanted that color, I'd pick it from the darker selection of colors. That's why you can pick a darker color. This is worse than with the Athlon one, because this Athlon one, it's got my primary color that I chose mixed in with the dark green, or the darker version of my primary. This, it doesn't even show my secondary color in its proper form other than on the knuckles, which is part of the bodysuit, not part of the armor. But other than that, it's just all dark, which also means that if I want a consistent color, if I want to be just all the emerald color, I can't. I can't get to that color. I'm forced. That part is always going to be dark. I can't make it look better. The closest I can get to being all one color with this particular set is this. Making it so that the secondary is as bright as possible and the primary is as dark as possible, which doesn't always work. Like with this blue section, we've got desaturation happening and it just doesn't work. If I go for the other blue, same problem. So it only really works with black and white, and even then you can still kind of see the lines. And of course there's still the issue of my helmet does not have the same issue. So it's going to look a little weird. Alright. And then again, weird lack of secondary color. Secondary color is merely a couple little stripes, but then there's a ton of white. Why is the white here? That's my question. Why is there so much white? Why not give the player the ability to color that as their secondary color, which is something that you gave them? This is I just can't comprehend what they were thinking. The secondary color exists to add more color, but yet they're barely using that and adding as much white as this. Just uncontrolled. You can't get rid of the white. It's stuck there. And yet your secondary color is just a couple stripes. Let's count the stripes on this right now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There are 6 very small stripes of secondary on the chest plate and shoulders. And there is a lot more white than that. That doesn't make any sense. Just give the players the ability to color that part. If you like that color, that part being different. If they want white there, let them choose to have white there. This is a little better. It's still not great. There's still not a lot of good use of the secondary color. But it's better than forcing you to have excessive amounts of a particular color, or forcing your color to be different than what you chose. So this one's another one of the ones that doesn't really use very much of the secondary color, and it doesn't color it right. Strange choice. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. This one, it actually has like some sort of symbol on there, but you can barely see it because of the glare and the fact that it's darker. If it were proper colors and not darkened like that, it actually would be more obvious what the symbol is. And then again, also, this is the base EVA, and yet the shoulder pads completely white, or almost completely white. Barely uses the secondary color at all. This one, barely any secondary color. Same for this one. This one's got this random symbol on it, and yet it's got yellow. Why is there yellow? What if my color combination clashes with the color yellow? If I were pink, I don't think the yellow would work very well with the pink. But yeah, why is a symbol here? If you want symbols on the armor, like how this one has and this one, why not put the emblem there? Let people have an emblem on their armor like they used to be able to have. That would make sense. And then guess what? They can also choose what colors they are. So it won't be just this random black and yellow thing on their chest. Besides, that would be really cool if you've got, you know, your typical jump master chest plate here, but then you can unlock or receive one that has your emblem on it. Especially if the whole custom emblem thing was a thing still. Again, not a lot of secondary color, a lot of white and poor coloring. Not very consistent, but okay. This is another interesting thing. It's not terrible to have shoulder pads that are the primary color and chest plates that are the secondary color. That can be cool. especially if you have individual control over everything. But, you know, it's kind of important not to force the players to have certain things happen that they don't want, or they might not want to have. This one's got stripes along it. I don't know. I personally think that with these ones, this is the base. This is also the base. For the bases of these sets, I think they should be kind of like how this one is for the chest plate here. The chest plate of the basic Legionnaire armor here is just almost entirely the primary color, and there's little to no extra marking on it. Not excessive white or stripes or discolorations. It's just the primary color and a little bit of detailing with the secondary. That's alright. This, what if I want the recon body to look like my primary color without all of these extra stripes? What's up with that? But if I do want stripes, why not have that be the variant? Why make it so that the default has the stripes? This is actually pretty good. The fact that the fire is colored was a good move. The Emil, the alternate armor for Emil, the Wrath something or other armor, for some reason they added flames to that one too, but they are white and you can't change the color. So at least with this one they had the right plan. Though they also added these skulls, I think they should have added your emblem instead. Because what if you just want fire and not skulls? You know? Old Halo games would have let you change the emblem there. Instead you've got a skull emblem, whether you like it or not. But yeah, also unfortunately there is also a lot of dark colors, darkening on the, or for the primary. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do that. If I want my primary to be dark that much, then I will make it dark myself. There's no reason to, well, like, see, it's okay in the little amounts. A little tiny bit of darkening. Let's see, where's a good example of that? Here's a okay example. This isn't quite so bad with the darker color. It just kind of adds some shaping to it that they want to add. But if you're going to make the vast majority of the armor that dark color, just don't do that. Just make it the base color, and you can make it darker if you want. Again, this thing has a random orange mark on it. It doesn't need to be there. Might as well have an emblem there. But why have a random colored part that you can't control? Same issue as already mentioned. Secondary color is way darker than normal. This one's just got a big black thing in the chest, but I don't think that's that big of a deal. This one, again, this is the default warrior. This isn't a variant of warrior. But it's got all of this like weird scar-like, camo-like texture on it. But only on the chest plate. Like, again, they could be consistent and make it so that the entire gear has it. Kind of like how they did with the flames here. It's not just the flames on the chest plate. The flames are on the shoulders, the arms, the legs, all of it. Whereas you look at Where is it? There it is. This, it's completely consistently a normal pattern on the arms and legs, but then the chest plate has this weird scratchy thing going on. It just looks weird. Doesn't make sense. Yeah. So of course, things like these warrior shoulders, that's fine, because you see it's just got gray on it for the shoulders. It's a variant. It's not the default. The shoulders have the primary color and some gray on it. That could be really great in the normal customization system that Halo has had in the past, like with Halo Reach and Halo 4. That would be great, because then you'd get the opportunity to have a little gray on your Spartan, if you so desired, with those shoulders. But you wouldn't be forced to, because the default would be something else. But of course they made the default weird by darkening the secondary and doing some weird inconsistent things, so that doesn't work anymore. This is another example of the exact same thing as right here. The shoulders and arms and legs are all symmetrical, but the body is not. It just doesn't quite make sense what's going on there color-wise. It's like they were trying to go for camo, but they decided not to do camo anymore after that. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Again, more white. This one is kind of strange, because it's like, where's all the color? This one, look at that weird, what in the world is going on with the legs there? It's like a completely different color. I wonder if it's just because of pink. Okay, so it's blending the colors, which is pretty weird. Not exactly sure why they did that. I won't say that it's a terrible thing to do, to have blendable colors there, but again, it's not that consistent with the rest of everything. And the fact that I might really like this chest plate for some reason, but then I'd have to suffer and deal with those legs is another thing. The fact that the entire body is all one thing. So yeah, another case of some weird choices there. I'll just keep going through all of this. And again, there's barely any secondary color on this whatsoever, but there's a bunch of white. This doesn't make any sense. Why add a bunch of white and leave out the fact that you have a second color to choose from? And just like, oh, you know, let's add just the slightest touch of that secondary color. Why? Why just add the slightest touch when the secondary color is supposed to be like the primary, except it's not as common as the primary? That's what the point of a secondary color is. Right here, the secondary color on this Spartan is white, because that's the most prominent color aside from the black undersuit. Secondary color should be second most prominent. That's just kind of the way the secondary color works. But they decided to make white the secondary color, and your secondary color just isn't included. This is kind of cool. They made good use of the secondary there. And that's kind of confusing, but this is a good example of actually doing the camo thing that they seemed to be trying to do on everything else. It's still symmetrical, And I think it's because they probably just made the texture, or they probably only textured one piece, like one side of the arms and the legs, and just have the other side be a mirror. So that's probably part of the reason why all of these color patterns on the arms and legs are very symmetrical. But it still doesn't quite make sense why something like this, that doesn't look like a bunch of scratches. That looks like intentional painting. If they were trying to go for the scratches, they should have made it look like scratches, even if it has to be mirrored. Same with this. This looks like absolute chaos on the chest plate, but it just looks like caution stripes for the most part on the arms and legs. Then you go to this, you can actually see what they're trying to do because they made it the right size and frequency and everything. It's trying to be camo. And again, though, they've got a symbol on the chest there. It's using the secondary, so it's a lot better than some of the other ones. But that might as well just be the emblem. You might as well put the emblem there. I know that would actually, unlike a lot of these, that would actually be a good bit of extra work to add emblems to the Spartans, but that's what they always used to have, so there's no reason not to have them. You shouldn't be taking out features, you should be adding them. But yeah, this is actually a good case, though, of using a slightly darker version of the primary color and having faded secondary color areas, doing transitional stuff, because the point is camo, which I think Spartans can look pretty cool with camo. You could thank XCOM for having that kind of a thing going on. If you want to see what a Spartan from Reach or Halo 3, even some Halo 5 sets, what those Spartans look like with camo on it, I highly recommend XCOM 2. It's a fun game, but there are a lot of mods for it that add Halo stuff. And you can color and detail your Spartans as extremely as you want. And camo is one of the things you can add to them. And Spartans do look pretty cool with camo coats on them. So I do like the concept behind this, and I think the execution was a lot better than a lot of these were. But yeah, here's another one with random yellow. I don't have yellow as a color that I selected anywhere. I don't know why that's there. They could have added the detail color and put those stripes there. And that's the thing, is interestingly, a lot of the extra colors that they add, they only add one extra color most of the time. Which means that they're kind of sticking with a palette of 3 colors. Halo 3 stuck with a palette of 3 colors. And the third color was the detail color. Basically what 343 did in this game is they basically turned the secondary color into your detail color and they decided whatever the secondary color will be on most of the gear. And for most of the gear, kind of like stuff like this, the secondary color is the same as your primary, and what you choose is more of a detail color sort of thing. And that's, I think, one of the biggest problems with the colors, is just they're not giving you the control that you're used to having in all of the other Halo games. You usually have full control over your colors, but yet this one, for example. It's kind of hard to see with this. Man, this music is loud. Hold on. I thought my music was set to be off, but it's not. Sorry if you couldn't hear me at all because of that music. But yeah, see here, let's see. I'll make a darker color. Make these colors darker. There's this random blue in here. It's barely even noticeable, but it's noticeable. There's absolutely no reason to have this blue here. They might as well have not even added it at all. But it's there, and you can't use that pattern without having blue there because of terrible design plan. Terrible choices in the design. Here's another example of the dark colors that, you know, it doesn't make sense because if I wanted a dark color, I'd pick it myself. That one's alright. Still could use more secondary on the shoulders, I think. This one is kind of disturbing, especially because of that dark blue. And it's Seeker, but I don't personally find Seeker's body armor to be that terrible. It's just bad, not as awful as the helmet is. Again, look at these shoulders. They're white. Not the secondary color. They should either be the secondary color or not white. This one's kind of interesting. It looks like they decided they wanted the Japanese flag to be part of the design. Not sure why. But yeah, you'll basically see all of the things I've been complaining about there on every single one of these pieces. Excessive amounts of white or shapes that don't make sense, don't need to be there, that could be replaced by an emblem. There's another random color that, well, actually all three of the random colors they've added that don't need to be there. I never chose to have any cyan on my Spartan. The blue on the shoulders is not something I chose to have. I didn't choose any yellow, so I don't see why any of those should be there. Especially because they don't all go well with the color combinations I might want. This is another good example of camo usage, though the secondary color is not part of the camo, and it's not the most consistent. There's another symbol, but at least they made it the secondary color. Primary color is barely visible on this. Basically, the only primary color you see on this Spartan is almost entirely the undersuit. So if the undersuit was black, you'd find that this chest plate is basically just gray and white. And most of the armor everywhere else is also mostly gray and white. So, kind of bad choices there. This is interesting because the wrists are almost entirely secondary color. Okay, now here is something that is probably my least favorite case of the already annoying extra dark colors, which there aren't a lot of examples of that anywhere else, but this is the noble armor. It is supposed to resemble Carter's armor. Now, Carter's color scheme, I'll just equip that right now. What Carter's actual color scheme is. He wears a dark blue. Technically, the dark blue that he has is not attainable in this game. But then his secondary is silver. Now look at what color this his arms are there. But now, if you see what color they are on, say, another piece of gear that might use the secondary, if I can even tell if it's using, this one uses it, okay. So see, that light gray color, that's the color I've got equipped. It's actually also on the top of my helmet. These shoulders, that's the color I get. Carter's shoulders are supposed to be the color that's on top of my helmet right now, that light gray. But even when I choose that color, it's dark gray. The closest I can get is this, but that's significantly darker than what he had. And guess what? I can make them black, but I could already make them black if it was the normal colors. See the top of my helmet? That's black. It's the same black basically as what my arms are. So why are they dark? I can get the same, generally the same color, just a little bit brighter on everything, but the character that it's supposed to be inspired by doesn't have that dark of shoulders in the first place. So that just doesn't make sense in general. And then of course I have to go all the way back to where I was in order to continue. Would be very convenient if it would just hover over, automatically default to selecting the armor that you have equipped. It has to save what you've got equipped, so there's absolutely no reason it shouldn't be able to do that. But it just doesn't. A lot more cases of a lot of strange choices. This one has a gradient on it for some reason. Can't even tell what kind of pattern is supposed to be happening there. A lot of the same stuff. And I guess I'll take this time while I go through here to mention that actually I got to the next part I wanted to get to anyway. More character armor. And character armor I think is the biggest deal here. So we've got Noble 6's armor now, which for some reason they decided to call all of Noble Team's gear different things instead of what it is, which is Noble 6's is Mark 5, the B variant of Mark 5, not Decimator. I know they already have a Mark 6 Gen 1 set, so it's not like they have any problem with calling it something like, I know Commando is already a set. Carter's gear is Commando. But they could have called the one that we have here, they could have called this Commando Gen 1. Though, of course, with Carter's armor, they didn't follow so closely to what they had before, or in the Reach game, unlike most of the of the Noble Team armor. And this is another case of where they really could have offered a lot of cool things if they just would have let you choose these parts individually. Because, see, if you really wanted Carter to look like Carter, if you could choose one of the other members of Noble Team's legs, you could get it to look more accurate, while also still using this chest plate and these shoulders. But instead, you're stuck with the legs and the shoulders and the chest plate all being one, which kind of sucks. And a lot of Noble Team's armor is really cool. Even their takes on them are cool. And so it's kind of a shame that you can't actually, like, say, take this guy's legs and put them on something else. Use them with something else. Because his leg gear looks pretty cool. And his belt looks really cool. Stuff like that. Just, it would make sense if you could actually customize those, especially considering all of the other games since Halo 2 allowed you to do that. But yeah, also, they didn't color it like how Noble 6's armor is supposed to be colored. So his shoulders, using the primary color, his legs using the primary color. Since it's supposed to be Noble 6's gear, the Mark 5B gear, there's no reason not to color it like Mark 5B is supposed to be. This is a very, very interesting pattern. It makes no sense. I don't understand what's going on. But that's all I'm going to say about that. And this is another weird one. So Cat's armor. Where's the secondary? All that I see is my primary color and white. Now, this is another one of the things where they completely changed something that shouldn't have been changed the way it was. Their placement of the white, if that were the secondary color, that would be great. I would love this gear if that white were my secondary color, but it's not. And to make matters worse, Cat didn't have that much white. Cat had dark gray. In the areas where there's this white, most of that would have been dark gray on Cat. So they literally took it the opposite direction. That'd be like if you took a black Spartan, or not a black Spartan, but a Spartan that wears black, and decided, hey, we're gonna make him wear white now. When he's supposed to be wearing black. That's basically what they did, except with the secondary color. And they force you to do it. When you have a color that you're supposed to be able to control, just there, being wasted. Also, the back is darker on both the back of the body armor and the back of the legs. I don't know why. Especially considering most of the rest of the armor isn't. It's just strange. But also, I'd really like to be able to use this body with other shoulders. Like, I would really like to use this chest plate and maybe even these legs as well, with the belt and everything, with Carter's arms. That would be really cool, with the Noble arms. But I can't do that, which sucks. I love this customizer if it weren't for the fact that they lumped it all into one selection there. And here's our Mark 6. Kind of lacking a secondary color as per usual. Also lacking some detail colors that should be there. There should be more gray. Pronouncing certain parts of it, but instead it's so incredibly solidly the primary color, it actually looks kind of plasticky. I'd highly recommend, if you want to look like a cosplayer, totally go for this Mark 6 that they have. Pick like a really weird visor color, or just a color, and basically just do this and pick the Boomco assault rifle and pistol. Oh, World's End is equipped. That's too dark. But see, you can make it look pretty much like it's a fake Spartan or a plastic Spartan by using this particular set of gear with that rifle. Because they're so incredibly lacking in detail with the coloring there. They don't have enough, which is weird. Alright, let's go back to where we were. Overall, oh yeah. At least they don't have excessive amounts of white. Alright. Here's another one that's got such small, insignificant detailing to it with the secondary that honestly I can't tell the difference very well. If I saw someone running around with this, I wouldn't know that they were wearing a different set, which I think the point of the armor is that people see it. And that's one of the things that 343 really forgot with a lot of their options, is that if you can't tell the difference, or if the difference is very minuscule, there's no point in having it, and nobody's going to want it or use it. The whole point of having multiple options is to give the players a reason or a way to look different. But if they always look the same, all of the options look the same, that's going to be a problem. Here's another thing, okay? June's armor. They actually didn't do so bad with this. It makes sense, the choice they made, except it really sucks in some ways. Okay, so what we have here is, oh, well, let's go somewhere where it's not going to put a nameplate in front of my legs so I can see the legs better. So it's got a gradient of the secondary color going up my legs. But then June's, the blue on the shoulders, that is blue still. What they could have done is left the dirt that they added as dirt, not a secondary color. And rather than making it so that you can have these random weird transitions going on that nobody really seems to want, I know everybody I've seen using this set switches to brown or black for their secondary because they don't want to have some absurd color change there, some absurd transition. But if the secondary color was just those shoulder bits, it would be more accurate to June, while also not throwing off what people might want to do with their colors, and making it so that they're forced to make certain color decisions. Because if I like having pink on my helmet, I can't wear this set without looking absolutely ridiculous, because my legs have pink transitioning to brown to green, and that's just not a very good design choice, especially when they are just as willing to make blue be an unchangeable color. Just make the unchangeable color part be dirt on the legs. Don't make it so we have to pick the dirt color ourselves, but we can't pick the color on the arms. That just doesn't make sense. Or if you are gonna make us color the dirt, make us color the net too, the ghillie hood. That'd be kind of cool to have a variant where we can color that. But no. And then of course the armor of the characters in the game. The main characters. I don't know what the deal is with that, but they made it so that those are all very different. Yeah, and also, of course, Master Chief's gear is nowhere to be seen. The gear he actually uses in the game. Nowhere. I don't know why they keep doing this. It doesn't make any sense why they keep doing this. They've got this gear, Centurion, which is basically just a modified version of what Master Chief has, but it's a modified version. Now, that brings me to something that is probably one of the biggest problems that I see with their armor, aside from not being able to customize it individually. I'm gonna go back, find the recruit gear. In every other Halo game before Halo 4, so all of Bungie's Halo games, they did something clever. So, you have the starting gear, right? Typical starting gear, typical default gear. In every game where there's default appearances, whether it be pieces of gear that you can choose and or a skin, like games like Fortnite and other things, Minecraft, Apex, all of those kinds of things, you see someone wearing the default gear and you basically immediately think of them as a new guy. Because who would ever wear default gear? Except in all of Bungie's Halo games, you would see people wearing default gear. Even when they were high ranks and had been playing for a long time and clearly had more stuff in their armory than just the default gear, you'd still see them wear it. Because they made it so that the main character was awesome, for one. Master Chief, really cool character. But he's also the main character wearing default gear. Mark 6 was the gear that everybody had from the start, and everybody would always at some point wear it even after they had other gear, because it was the armor of their favorite character. So when 343 introduced this recruit armor, they basically just added a set of armor that nobody would want to wear, because it means nothing other than that they know nothing or have nothing. Basically, it's just like a mark of shame to be wearing the recruit armor. Whereas in Halo Reach and Halo 3, you wear the default armor and you resemble the main character. Now in Halo Reach it's a little different because the main character wears whatever you wear, but the default armor in that is pretty well known as what Noble 6 is supposed to wear, and also the previous Noble 6. If you've seen the Deliver Hope trailer, which is a pretty good trailer for Halo Reach, that one has the original Noble 6, and he wears that helmet too. And he's a really cool character, the little bit that he's shown. But yeah. So it makes sense to add the character's gear, the default character's gear. All of the story characters' stuff is something that people will want, but if you change it too much, make it so it can't look the same way, that kind of sucks. Especially Helljumper. Okay, Helljumper, I'm really not happy with how Helljumper worked out. Because Buck's armor looks cool, but you're basically just forced to either have a target on your chest or a smiley face on your chest if you want to wear his armor. On top of that, your bodysuit does not fit the armor at all, and it looks like you basically took a big guy's armor and found some way to set it on you as a little guy. Like, look at how much space you have over the shoulders. I don't recall if Buck has that much space, but I don't think he does. Also, same with the legs, the lower or the upper part of the hips. There, sticks out a lot. Buck's gear doesn't really look so messed up. And then also that stupid excessive white and the smiley face. Like, if they just would have taken out the white, it wouldn't matter if they had that detail on it, that emblem thing on the chest. Because if you wanted to look like Buck, you could just make your armor, your primary and your secondary, gray, like what he has, and you wouldn't have to worry about that. But they added all that white and a bunch of crazy patterns on it that he doesn't have, almost seemingly to make sure that you couldn't possibly look exactly like him, or enough like him, which is dumb. More weird patterns and stuff. Okay, this is probably one of the best things they did. I don't quite understand some of the choices they made, specifically this shoulder. This is one of those cases where the darkening of the secondary actually makes sense. So let me go to, let's see, maybe more like that. I don't know. I'll just stick with this for now. George kind of has like a tan green color that's a little bit different from those normally, but basically this is what the idea behind it was. By making the shoulder and that top part darker, they made it so that you can pick a yellow or orange color while wearing George's gear and get kind of like a red color for the shoulder and upper part, which is what George has. However, considering how often they control your color that you have on your armor without you being able to control it, like this, you've got that yellow on you without any way of controlling it. Considering that, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense why they wouldn't just make those red or make the chest yellow. And I also don't understand why that isn't the same color as the other shoulder, considering George's colors on his shoulders are symmetrical. Um, the hunter armor. This is a little bit weird, having the stripes on the legs and the lower arms, but not on the chest. But whatever. At least they used secondary color correctly. This is another one that's kind of a bummer, because they've got that big gray area and the secondary isn't very well used. Considering the other variant of this barely uses secondary at all, and the half the armor is white, it really is disappointing, especially because this is what I would have chosen as my main piece of gear otherwise, because it's the closest to what I had in Halo Reach. So this and a Helljumper helmet would be pretty close to what I had in Reach. And if I wanted to replicate my Reach gear, I just can't do that really, because guess what? My secondary color will be completely overwritten and non-existent, and my secondary color is my main burst of color, because I usually wear gray and purple, or white and purple, and if the purple is barely there, that kind of sucks. I'm supposed to primarily wear gray, not purple. I don't want to be all purple, but you know, I'm forced to have either just like a tiny stripe or none, and that's stupid. This one is one that actually makes sense, because Red Team Leader does have all of that going for him, mostly being one color and just having a stripe. I don't get why they had to include the emblem. Again, if they were doing the thing where you actually can individually change your pieces, that could be one of the extra special pieces you could unlock. Specifically, Jerome's shoulder. Or you could even also have Alice's shoulder and Douglas's shoulder. But instead, you're stuck always having Jerome's Mark IV as the default Mark IV. Specifically Jerome's. Which sucks. Why not just have it be Mark IV, Gen 1, and then Jerome's Mark IV, or specifically for the shoulder? Like, if it has to be full set, just don't even include the emblem. But yeah, if they had gone and kept Halo 3's style and had a detail color, then I would have had some gripes with this being all one color, because that stripe that Red Team Leader has, it is a detail color. That's what it's supposed to be. This game was made around the same time as Halo 3, and the detail color was something that the Spartans would keep in spite of what team they were on, kind of as a thing to help identify the Spartan. And that's what this was for. Red Team Leader could be identified amidst all of the other green Mark IV Spartans because of his red stripe and his emblem. That was what the purpose of the detail color and the emblem, that was the purpose of those in Halo 3. So that's exactly what the detail and emblem were for. Identification. This one is another one of those ones that's kind of weird because they darken colors unnecessarily, but it's a cool design nonetheless. Interesting choice with all of the checker marking and whatnot. Mark 5, as much as I don't like the fact that you have pretty much all of your secondary color completely absent, it does make sense with the Mark 5 Alpha gear here, because that's what you looked like in Combat Evolved. This is thus far the most accurate that 343 has gotten to imitating Mark 5 in the previous games, aside from Combat Evolved Anniversary, which I think is pretty close, though it didn't look as good as this. This is overall very, very accurate. So I'm willing to forgive the lack of secondary color for that one. And I do like that they've got like some sort of special hexagonal pattern on there, though again it's a random yellow color. Let's see if I, there we go. Well, actually no, it isn't. Wow, the green makes it yellow. It's a blend. Interesting. I hadn't noticed that before. It's a blend of the colors that you've got, which doesn't make sense, but which is why when I wear this color it ends up looking yellow. Huh. But there is still all of that yellow rim stuff going on, which is too bad, because it doesn't always, yellow doesn't always match everything. But I think probably would have been better if it didn't blend the colors, but rather was just the secondary color for the hexagons. Whatever the case, I do appreciate any opportunity to see Spartans with camo. This is really irritating. Mark 6 Gen 1, they tainted by having the secondary color be dark. I really like the Gen 1 set. It looks great. It's a nice way to get a little bit closer to the classic Halo that we all know and love. The Halo 2 and Halo 3 versions of Master Chief. But the secondary color is dark, which means so many bad things. For one, if you have normally a bright color on your Spartan that you usually wear Mark 6 and you've got, like, say, a bright red, now you can't have the bright red, you have to have a dark one. Also, if you are trying to make Master Chief, you have to go and pick the brightest possible green to get a almost similar green color. It's still too dark. That just doesn't make sense. Just give me the color that I chose, not a darker version of it. That one is probably the worst offender in that category, because of the fact that it's a classic piece of gear, a very, very iconic piece of gear that's so strongly tainted by that effect. This one's got kind of like a cool 7 on it, which bears some significance because Bungie's favorite number is 7, but you can't see it because it's white, so that's too bad. If only the bulk of it was secondary color rather than most of it being white. This one, again, very cool, especially because it's a special battle damaged version, but again, tainted by that darkened secondary color that loses potential in that, which sucks. A whole lot more of the same issues: unnecessary white, lack of secondary color, all that kind of stuff. This one, again, unnecessary white, ruining the potential. All of that white should be the secondary color. That's what should happen. But we've got white instead, and that sucks. I never use this gear because I'm not going to wear a special sniper ghillie suit of armor in white. Unless I'm going to snowy places, but let me decide that. It's unnecessary to control that thing about that. Now, finally, another offender. This gear, Emil's gear is black, normally. So, it kind of makes sense that they would darken this. Except the bodysuit isn't darkened. The bodysuit and the main armor, it's all controlled by the primary color. And yet, the bodysuit still pops out a lot more than the armor now, because it doesn't get darkened like the main armor is. The main armor should have stayed the normal color that the primary is, not a darker version, so that it blended better. And in general, so that you can actually choose if you want to be a dark colored Spartan or not. Because if I'm wearing the Wrath armor here, and I want to be white, guess what? I can't wear white with Wrath armor. It's at best the steel color from every other Halo game. And steel is the color that you can choose, and pepper is it black. But it's just so weird. Terrible design. There's no reason to do that, but they did it anyway. And then, of course, there's barely any secondary color whatsoever on it. Can't make that awesome shoulder pad that everybody loved out of Reach. You can't color that. You never could in Reach anyway, but that could have been something that they did better than Reach. If they would have thought of that. But they didn't. So, still extremely inferior. And then this one is the one I was talking about earlier. They've got all these flame designs, but they don't use the primary with that, or the secondary color, for any of the flame other than at the very end, or at the very bottom where the boots are, which again, most of the time you can't even see that. So that's kind of awful. I'm just gonna equip this, because the Mark V gear is just some of the best gear in this game. Alright, time to talk about helmets. I'm not going to go through all of them, because this has gone on for a while, and I'd like to focus on other parts of the game. But there is one particular thing that I feel I should point out, and Recon here is best example of this problem. So see how, here we go, we'll choose a different color. We've got this blue, but we're gonna switch to, here's a good one. We'll switch to King here. Okay, King is a pretty bright yellow, pretty clear. You can see that pretty well, especially with EVA. I always love to see it on EVA. Look at how dark it is. Recon and Scout both are like this. There are a couple more helmets, but the ones that I know off the top of my head are like this. Is Recon, and then also, where's Scout? There it is. Scout. The visor is unnaturally darker, and it's not a shadow. From what I've seen, there are plenty of pieces that have like stuff covering the visor, or thin visors, that have brighter visors than that. Even this is a pretty good example. Recon Gen 1, Recon Gen 2. The visor is so much darker, you can barely tell what color visor it is. The brightest you can get is silver, and that's still super dark. I don't understand why they did that. I don't see a reason for that. If you want a dark visor with your helmet, you can pick a dark visor. They've got plenty of visor options. Bright and dark of every color that you can think of. So why darken the visor? For no reason. You should have that part popping the most, but nope, it's darker. Don't have much else to say about the helmets. Though, where's Agent Locke's helmet? Would have been awesome if they would have made this have a glowing visor. Same with the rest of the Hunter gear. They could have made Locke's gear the coolest set in the game if they just would have had the glowing parts be there for the player to have. Also, this, just taking a look at the Mark IV, I didn't change my color to be darker, my secondary color. It's just dark like that. If I change my primary, or my armor set back to the set that belongs with that helmet, Mark IV Gen 1, the top of the helmet and the stripe don't match because they darkened the top. I don't know if you've seen a lot of Halo Wars. Those colors aren't different from each other in Halo Wars. The way it's normally done, they're supposed to be the same color. I don't know what they were thinking when they darkened that stripe. It just doesn't look good. But yeah, mostly that's all I'm going to... Okay, here's another darkened, unnaturally darkened visor. Especially EVA of all things to have that, because like all of the other EVA like things, like that's the most prominent the visor will get, but the Wrath ones, super dark visor. Well, somehow I managed to end this with me looking kind of like Jerome here, so I guess I'm gonna take it the extra step. Next thing I'm going to talk about here is visors. Now, this is a lot of options for visors. Kind of too many options. Not that that's a bad thing. I know I personally really like how large the collection of visors are. It's better than Reach's. But I think they should have done things a little differently. And this is where opinion comes in here. I've stated my opinion a couple times, but I'm just gonna try my best to point out when opinion comes over just straight up like gaming theory subjects, I guess you could say. But personal opinion, I think they could have given you a color selector or colors that you could pick, and then given you different kinds. So I don't know if you have noticed yet. I'll use the blue as an example. So here's the default blue, the blue that you start with, which right off the bat I'd like to mention, blue is the worst starting color that it's just, it's not the worst. If you started with like hot pink, that's actually not that hot of a pink. It's kind of a reddish pink, but if you started with a very pink visor, that would be pretty bad. But blue, just the point of the visor colors and the choices that they've had in the past. Gold goes well with just about everything. And even though it might clash with the occasional color, this is what visors looked like in every other Halo game. So it kind of just became an accepted thing. Whether or not it clashed, that became an accepted thing. But generally it wouldn't even clash because it's just this gold window. And then in Halo Reach, they gave you kind of like a yellowish visor. But then all of a sudden blue. Blue doesn't go very well with red. Sometimes it goes great with red, but if I want to make a red Spartan, then guess what? If I'm starting out, I'm stuck with blue. So I have to have the red and blue look. What if I want to have blue, though? Good gracious. If I want to be a blue Spartan, that means my visor is going to be nearly indiscernible. And that's too bad. They could have started us with silver. Of all of these visor colors, it would have made sense to either give us Dauntless, where it's kind of just like this dingy, kind of goldish, but also really kind of muddied visor. So you kind of, you want to get the bright, colorful visors. It gives you more encouragement to get those if you've got like a dingier visor. But also like silver, that's colorless. That's the best option as a starting thing. When you can't change the color, that's the last time you want to have a color that you don't want on your Spartan. And sometimes you don't want blue on your Spartan. But also, back to something I was going to point out, there are two kinds of visors here in all of this selection. It's pretty easy to miss, but you can tell by kind of the gradient on them in the previews. This one is the normal kind of visor. It is the default, so that kind of makes sense. That's kind of obvious. But there are glowing visors. They don't glow bright, but this is a glowing visor. It has an unnatural brightness to it. I think it would have been pretty cool. In my personal opinion, it would have been pretty cool if they would have taken it a step further and made it actually like Locke's visor. Made it so you can actually unlock fully glowing visors. And while they're at it, they could have also added matte visors. That was one of the appeals of the black visor in Halo Reach, was that it was matte. It blended in with the suit to some degree. It didn't shine like this one. It was just flat black. But it'd be cool if you could choose from those three types of visors: glowing, matte, or normal metallic, and have all of the color selections. But yeah, and also generally it seems like it would have been better if they would have started you off with a silver or gold visor, like how everybody seems to have normally in Halo. Generally, all of the Spartans have gold visors or silver visors or some sort of slightly tinted version of those. But they make you start with blue. And just right there, this doesn't look very good. I mean, that's subjective. Some of you might think that looks great, but to me, that looks hideous. And guess what? It's entirely possible for me to get a really cool set like this in this game and still have never unlocked a single visor color. And so I am stuck having blue on my Spartan, and I can't change anything about it. That wouldn't be so bad if it was silver. That's just a normal color. Kind of like how the bodysuit is a black color. That's really easy to just kind of forget that it's there. If you pick a color like red, guess what? You're gonna see that red, and that is a color that's added to the suit. If you're gonna pick green, that's a color that you'll see, you'll pay attention to. If it's silver, guess what? It kind of just fades. You kind of just stop noticing that it's there. You can still see the visor. It's not like black where you almost notice it more because it's like a gaping void. But it's also not something that just kind of sticks out at you and is like, hey, there's a color here. Then on the other hand, gold, that's just kind of the color that Spartan visors have always been. So that really is how it should be. As for colors, colors are kind of hard to recognize what exactly they're going to come out to by their little thumbnail thing. I think that's probably my only real gripe about the color selection, is that you see the color and you can like go to it, but it's most likely going to look a little different from what you see on the grid, and that's kind of annoying. Also, it seems like Master Chief's green is always going to be this plus like the gray, and it would be really nice to get that, but of course they're kind of keeping that away from us on purpose. They always kind of have, but that's basically all for the armor customization. Don't mind those noises. Let's go into here. Alright, emblems. This is another example of taking away something that shouldn't have been taken away. And Halo trying to be like Call of Duty games and all of that, when it just shouldn't be. So, ever since emblems were introduced in Halo 2, two things have been happening with them. For one, you could choose a primary and a background. You could choose two different parts of the emblem, and the other thing is that they would be placed on your Spartan, so people would see it. Another thing is that it would be accurately the same colors and the same design everywhere. Something I've noticed with this one, which I'm going to try to see if I can find an example of it, is that sometimes... Okay, here's a pretty good example. The emblem that you see is a donut with a sword through it. Literally no one else will ever see this. The emblem up behind my Spartan there. They will only see the one in the bottom corner. So the emblem that you're showing in the preview there, no one's going to see that but you, which is kind of unfortunate, especially considering with this, for example. I might like the way that Spartan helmet looks as an emblem, and I might want to make it match my color scheme. So here, I'm gonna make it so it's green like me, give it the red detailing and the golden colored visor. Guess what? It looks awful in the card that everyone else is gonna see, because the entire background is affected by the color that you change the visor with. And that's just lousy. So if you want the backdrop to be less obvious, that's going to be the color of the visor as well. Alright, hold on. Okay. Sorry. Random delay there. But yeah, basically the emblem. They took all of the significance out of it and turned it just into another meaningless, pointless character card as like a backdrop to put your name on. If that's what Call of Duty did, that's not ever what Halo was supposed to have. So that's pretty annoying. The poses, I think those are pretty cool. I think it would have been really cool if they would have had more of like a thing. I know Halo Online originally had something like this, where basically you'd have your like Spartan in your pose or whatever, but a specific things like a favorite weapon or something like that, something could actually influence what the weapon in your hands was. So obviously that wouldn't work with everything, but say I have this pose, you could have a list of weapons that work with that pose, that are actually compatible with that exact pose, and make it so that you can pick this pose, but your favorite weapon, if it's one of those weapons, will be what's in your hands. Or it could be influenced by whatever your tool of destruction was in the match that you last played. That would just be a really cool way to make these extra special. But just they're already pretty good. Assassinations, there are a few too many to really know what in the world you're looking at, or to know like which animations are which. You're never really gonna see someone do an animation on you and know what they have. It's just gonna be like something. But also, let me show you something. When I select a piece of armor, so I'm going to take advantage of this to switch back to Mark 5. When I select a piece of armor, look what happens. See that? That's called an animation. Inside of this thing, you see a preview of your Spartan doing an animation when you select a piece of gear. Not a novel idea, completely and entirely normal. That's how this works. Now, what do you have in here? A lame picture that shows you nothing. All you'd have to do is have a placeholder Spartan model, just a basic Spartan model, or just a duplicate of your own, and just play the animation right here. I don't know what any of these look like. I know what one single frame of the entire animation looks like. I know at some point this guy is kicking this other guy's face. I know at some point this guy's holding him back with a knife. At some point some sort of throw is happening. But I don't know what the animation looks like. There might be more finesse to it. There might be an extra part. If I recall correctly, the liftoff animation, this one, if I recall correctly, this liftoff one throws the Spartan really far. It might even involve a plasma grenade, but I can't tell. To me, it just looks like he's gonna stab the guy into the stomach with the knife. They already have all of the capabilities of playing animations inside of this menu. If they just zoom out the Spartan a little bit so you can actually see his feet and play the animation with a dummy or a clone of the same Spartan, you could actually see what you're looking at. But they didn't do that. And that's dumb. The announcers are kind of cool. I don't really have much to say about that. Of course, changing your gender, that's cool. It's better than how Halo 3 had it, just changing the voice, so I'm glad they didn't revert that back to 3's style. Not to mention their model is a lot better than most of the other games had, especially better than Halo 4's. Halo 4's female looked really weird and mostly like just a starved person, not so much like a female. So I'm glad to see that rather than making them absurdly skinny, they actually made like a female model of a physically fit female instead of a starved male. Service tag. I don't really have much to say other than that I wish that would appear on your armor sometimes, or always. That's something I've always wanted in Halo, and I've never seen that happen. Except, of course, you see it happen in every Halo game. Specifically, well, almost every Halo game and Halo movie, show, cinematic, or whatever, in the form of actual characters. They almost always have somewhere on their chest plate their service tag. Just pretty simple white service tag print. Chief almost always, whenever he's shown in his Mark IV gear, in any form of cinematic, movie, TV show, it's always got the 117 in big white paint. They even have that in Infinite. I'd really love to see that in Infinite or something. But players' service tags actually showing up on the armor would be cool. The weapon skins, I think they are pretty cool. A nice touch. Good way to personalize things. Really like the UNSC thing there. I feel like they could have easily taken this the extra mile by making it so that you could change the model as well, ever so slightly. Make it so that it actually has the, like, say, for example, instead of just adding the noble thing there, you know, like as a nod to Noble Team, they could actually have added the Halo Reach assault rifle model so that you could actually have that. That would have been kind of cool. Same for this, if they would have had like the Halo 2 BR be a skin instead of a loadout item, that would have been kind of cool. Though I don't know how different the Halo 2 BR behaves. I haven't personally been able to tell the difference function wise, if there is a difference. I know one thing I would have liked to see would be a proper black SMG skin that isn't like glowing, because SMGs were originally much darker than this. Same for this. I would have liked to see a proper silver pistol Magnum skin, other than the Target Master ones, which are a little bit hard to obtain. Rec packs. Where do you even begin when talking about and criticizing rec packs? You know, Faven and Luke the Notable, I don't know if I mispronounced Faven's name, they came up with a really good idea for how rec packs could have been done. I would recommend looking for one of their videos on that, because they came up with a really good idea for how that could actually work and not be too intrusive. However, I will say, I'd say whatever they talked about would be great, but individual armor customization as well. I don't think they brought that up, but I have. Collection menu, oh boy, here we go. So first off, this doesn't make a whole lot of sense why they have this, because, well, I mean, it does work to show you what you don't have. So that is kind of helpful. Still a very, very bad way of showing off what you don't have, especially because it's just a little icon. What they could have done is made it so that you actually can preview it on your Spartan and see what that does. And Reach did this really well. Being able to preview something being able to preview something that you don't have access to actually increases your likelihood to really, really want it. I'm just gonna check really quick to make sure I am speaking. Okay, cool. Just needed to do a quick audio check because I did have to mute my mic earlier. But being able to see this helmet on my Spartan, even though I can't use that, see the 3D model of it, that would make it a lot harder to go without if it looks cool enough. Because I'd see this stuff and be like, oh my goodness, that armor is so cool. I want this. But I don't know what this looks like. Achilles? I've never seen it that close. I've seen people wearing it in gameplay. But due to the coloring of the suit, the undersuit, and the high competitive nature of the game, there's just no reason for me to ever notice it or be able to, no way to study it properly. I have to like look for someone else's videos of it or have a friend who has it in order to know what it looks like, which is weird. Also, another thing, okay, so right here I've filtered by what I don't have of emblems. It doesn't tell you how you get it. Even if it were saying in most of these can be found in rec packs, which it wouldn't say because none of these are rec pack earned things. I've already unlocked everything you can unlock through rec packs. So none of these go or come to you from rec packs. They're all different level rewards and such, and achievement rewards. But if it would just tell me that, that would definitely help with getting them or motivating me. If, say, I see one that stands out to me. Let's say I'm a big fan of warthogs, and I'm like, I want to be represented by a warthog. Better yet, noble team. I want the noble emblem, or the Oni emblem. I don't know how to get them. How long will I have to play in order to get that? It's unlocked by a rank or an achievement, or like a something, not the achievements, but like a milestone or something. But I can't figure out how specifically to get that. How many ranks do I have to go up before I get noble emblem or Oni emblem? I don't know, and I probably never will, because I probably won't be playing that long, because this game is actually kind of terrible. But yeah, it's just kind of weird that they've got like the system, you can see all of the stuff, but they don't tell you how you get it, and they don't show you what it looks like and what you're missing out on. It's just kind of there to know how many things you don't have. With the loadout stuff, same sort of situation. Just kind of shows you what loadout things there are, what you do or don't have. In this, many people have stated it, and if you've played this game, you know it. Selling these in bulk would be the right way to go. Instead, they make it so that you have to sell them one at a time. So let's see. I don't really care much for railguns. Say I don't want any railguns, but I want another rec pack. I have to do this over and over and over again. 50 rec points each, over and over and over again. All of that time that I have to wait because the connection is not so great today. Stupid. All you have to do is have it be a little thing like, look how many buttons are being used. B for back, X for sell, Y for filtering it, and an option for saving changes and closing. There are a lot more buttons on the controller. Oh yeah, and the right and left bumpers. You could make a trigger. Delete all. You could make A delete all, because A doesn't do anything. I can press A while hovering over these. It's not going to do anything. There's still one more button on the front there that doesn't do a thing. You could just make A be the option for deleting all of them. Or since A feels more like a natural place to keep your thumb, you could make that one be the initial selling, and make X be sell all. But instead, you've got all of that. Also, it doesn't tell you what any of these do. So obviously, if you are a Halo veteran, you know what a beam rifle is. We all know what a beam rifle is. It's a sniper rifle that is used by the Covenant. You can usually make 2 shots rapidly before it has to cool down, or if you pace yourself, you can do a lot more. It has like a battery style ammo, so instead of being able to pick up ammunition as you go and find another beam rifle on the ground, you'd have to swap it. These are kind of just things that you know about beam rifles, but I don't know what Sword of the Faithful does. What's different between these two other than the look? Okay, this one actually says what it does. But they don't really say a lot. Okay, so they do say, huh, what was I just looking at that didn't have it though? Okay, so I might have been wrong about that, but oh, I know where the problem was. The problem has been with when I have to pick them. When selecting them during Warzone. That's what I've generally found the issue of not being able to know what they are, what they do. Because, yeah. You're kind of in a hurry. I think it's generally the thing. But, yeah. Since they do have that, can't say there's that much of an issue with the UI in here. I would say one thing though is that the lack of casual modes kind of makes it a little harder to experience them for yourself without being in the thick of a very competitive match. So that can be a little problematic. Also would help if they were a little bit more prominent. Like, for example, it's really easy to forget which one of these does which thing. Whereas if it was more of like a more obvious color change, and if it actually changed its appearance based on what it does, that would also help with making it easier to remember which one does which. That's pretty hard to change when it's just colors. So, of course, that's kind of a little bit much, but I know with Tartarus's gavel, I can never tell which one of those I'm actually, like, using other than by the name when I pick it up. But it would be great if Tartarus's gavel actually looked like Tartarus's hammer, instead of just a different color. It would also help in gameplay, and that's, I think, the biggest thing is, like, in gameplay, you see someone carrying a hammer, all you really see is the hammer. You don't know for sure if it's the grinder, the corpse maker, or Tartarus's gavel unless you're looking at them with a sniper rifle just standing there. But seeing them from a range and in no danger. But when you're in the thick of a fight, you can't just be like, judging by the pattern of the yellow and red, it is not in fact a grinder, but rather a Tartarus's gavel. And so I should be very, very careful because they can shoot or slam really far or whatever. But yeah, I know some of these they give you like a special shield or a speed boost, and that kind of is super obvious. But sometimes it's not so obvious. Settings. They gave you a lot of settings to change and mess with, but I think they forgot to add something that would be, I mean, they wouldn't have thought about it in the first place, but it would really help to have a field of view changer slider thing, so you could change your field of view to some small degree. Like, obviously you don't want to make it so it's just like, you could change your field of view to be like 180 degrees and see literally everything. But the field of view in this game by default is very, very small. It'd be nice to have a proper 90-degree field of view, because it's hard not to feel claustrophobic in this game. But that's going to be all. I gotta quickly wrap this up. I will have to talk about gameplay later, another time. So that will be all. Thank you for watching if you have. I will be doing this for the rest of the Halo games at some point. Hopefully I'll be able to do the full games and maybe do them a little faster, because this was a pretty long video. Alright.